is episode 10 of the Basic Stitch Knitting Podcast. This is Celine coming to you from Hong Kong. If you're a new viewer, welcome. And if you're a returning viewer, welcome back. I can be found on Instagram as basic.stitch.knitting and on Ravelry as Ochi. Everything down below. In the show notes, there will be everything I talk about in this episode, and the show notes will be in the Ravelry group. Yes, we do have a Ravelry group, and if you're interested, join the Ravelry group. But if you're not interested in it, you can just click into the respective thread for the show notes. It's a little bit dark outside. This is the second time I record the whole episode because the first episode was even darker. It was raining outside. I'm not sure if it will rain later. I hope it won't. And it's now 4 p.m. I think. It's definitely getting darker and darker from now on. So I need to be quick. I like to start this episode by asking you guys a question, and that is your experience as a knitter or a crocheter different before and after Ravelry? As in, before starting to use Ravelry and after starting to use Ravelry. Is your experience different? The reason why I'm asking this is because last week I attended a knit night. And there were 2 knitters, including myself, and 3 crocheters. Usually it wasn't like so small as a group, but then it's summer now, and most of the people who usually go to knit nights, which are normally expats, they are now back to their own country for summer holiday, I think. So there are only 5 of us last time. The 2 knitters, we know about Ravelry and we use it regularly. As for the 3 crocheters, they have never heard of Ravelry at all. I'm not sure if this is a crocheter versus knitter thingy, because there are a lot of like crochet pattern on Ravelry, right? I could totally see how the 3 of them crochet things. The way, from my observation, is like they might see a cute picture of a cute rabbit, and then they will be like, oh, that's a very cute rabbit, I want to crochet this. And then they will figure out, like, oh, the head is like a circular globe thingy, so they need to go online to look for tutorial to crochet the rounded shape thing if they don't know already how to do it. And then they will figure out how to do the ears and the body, like they figure it out bit by bit, so the end product usually looks slightly, or if not very different from the picture they have seen online, but they're okay with it because for them it's part of the fun. But for me, like, I rely completely on the patterns I could get from Ravelry. Like, if I see a toy that I want to knit, I will definitely go to Ravelry and see if I can find a pattern or similar pattern. If your knitting life actually spans across, pre-Ravelry age and post-Ravelry age, or maybe even though the Ravelry is there already, but you just recently learned about the existence of Ravelry, can you tell me, I'm just really curious, write down below in the comment, how different is the experience in terms of your knitting and crocheting life? So last time, after uploading my episode 9 of the Basic Stitch Knitting Podcast, when I was trying to type the timestamp or type the show notes, I had to look online for some information, probably about my sweater that I showed you in the last episode, or last few episodes. I found out that the designer of the cozy Saturday sweater, like the yellow sweater that I showed you guys before, unfortunately passed away on 13th of June 2017, and I didn't know anything about that. I mean, I knew that she was fighting against cervical cancer from the Tri-Cities Knit podcast, but it just happened too quickly and suddenly. I just wasn't expecting it, so I was pretty shocked and was sad as well. And I felt weird because I was, basically talking about one of her designs in the last few episodes without really knowing how she was doing. So A lot of people have said this, and I'll say that again, and that is, I think one of the things we can really do is really, to treasure people around you, and also we can remember Elena Nodal through knitting her patterns. She still have a lot of patterns on Ravelry, and it's still for sale, and the proceeds will go to her husband and her very young daughter. If you like the aesthetics of her design, totally go for it, because I try to be very honest in this podcast. If I don't like a certain pattern, if a certain pattern is, very not really helpful or very confusing, I will say it here, no matter how famous the designer is. But for Elena Nodal, from day one, I have always been raving over her patterns. It's just very well written, and you can see definitely that the designer has poured her soul into the design, and she's like a very hard-working designer. So what I'm saying is, if you like her aesthetics, don't hesitate. Her designs are top-notch. So after Cozy Saturday, I actually bought another pattern that I might knit when my knitting mojo is kind of like back full on with me in full force, that I'm willing to touch a lot of wool again. I'll knit her another design called Chance of Snow. It's a cardigan, and it's so pretty. It has a lot of beautiful detail, and usually when I see a lot of details like that, I would be like, I may not be able to do it if the construction looks very new and complicated to me. But because it's Elena Nodal's pattern, I'm very confident that it will be like very detailed and not confusing at all. On a happier note, there is another new pattern coming out next month, I think, early August, and it is a shawl by Kay Jones from the Bakery Bears podcast. It is called the Longbourn. I'm not sure if it's called Longbourn or Longbourn shawl. So Longbourn, of course, is the name of the house the Bennett's family was living in Pride and Prejudice. It's a shawl of a construction that I like. I've only knit one shawl in my life, like two actually, and both of them were like the triangular shawl. It's raining out there. I don't know if the microphone is picking it up. But it's fine. I mean, it might be loud, but rain kind of like take away the heat, I hope. Yeah. So, Longbourn, yeah. The usually it's like triangular shawl, which is fine. I'm fine with triangular shawl. But I have always wanted to knit a shawl that is like a 3 triangle panel shawl. Like there's like one central panel of triangle and then 2 smaller ones on the sides. And I don't know if there's a name for this kind of shawl, because it's like it's not exactly a half circle shawl. It's not a half pie shawl. It's like formed with 3 different, or if you like to have more triangles like section. Anyway, so Longbourn shawl is one of those like 3 triangles panel shawl with some cabling at the edge, I think. I'm pretty sure I will knit that shawl, but not sure what color right now. Alright, now let's talk about our knitting progress, like my knitting progress. But before talking about that, I like to talk about this. I've showed you this before. This is a washcloth. I recently just washed it and blocked it because I wanted to give it to my friend when I met her. But I decided I won't give it to her because I can't give it to her. The reason being that, okay, I'm not sure if it's picking up the color, but it's not the point. The point is, this washcloth I knit in Stylecraft DK Cotton Classique. I don't know, like, the exact name of that yarn, but it is a combination of the keywords I said before. And the colorway is called Poppy. It's a red, poppy red color. And let me tell you, it bleeds like crazy. When I washed it, when I first soaked it in eucalyptus, in water with eucalyptus, it bled quickly, immediately, and then I was like, oh, alright, I'm going to soak it with vinegar because I heard that vinegar can help fix the color. And after that, it was still bleeding. It still turned the water, like the acidic water, red. But I decided, well, I don't know, I just, decided to go on and block it out or just air dry it on a towel, and it stained or dyed my towel red. So, okay, I've heard that the color red is the hardest to fasten. It just bleeds more easily than any other color. So I can't really speak for the yarn, and I can't tell you if, the blue color or the yellow color will bleed as well in this, like, cotton classic style craft. But yeah, if you're trying to look for a cotton wool, at least don't go for the poppy color of this. This one I'm sure about. I just don't feel like I will buy this again. That's, yeah, because, seriously, you don't wash your face or even your body with something that bleeds like that. Now it can only be something that you put on the table and put something on it, like a vase or whatever. I'm glad it didn't, it didn't take me forever to knit. And now I am actually going to talk about my FO. My first FO I can't show you here because I've given it to my friend, but I couldn't put the picture, like the finished object picture here that I got from my Instagram. So it is a pair of mittens that I modified based on this pattern called Quo Vadis by Billie Jane Knits. And I've talked about this project extensively in my previous episodes of podcast, so if you're interested, you can go back and look for it, and if you don't want to watch it, you can just go to my show notes on the Ravelry group for more information, and also my project page for how I did the modification. But I'm really happy that I have given it to my friend, and apparently she likes it very much. And yeah, now she has left the office. It just feels a little bit weird for me when I go to work because she has been there in the firm since day one I start to work in this office, and it's just different. I mean, like, I do have friends. I still have friends in the firm, but it's just different because this friend of mine is somebody I shared some history with. I mean, we went to the same uni, we were uni mates, we were classmates, although we kind of belong to different groups. You see what I mean? Like, there are just a lot of subgroups in, a whole big, a big class, and we don't really, we are not from the same groups, but then, we were both cool and, laid back and kind, so it's just clicked, and it's just normal for us to be able to talk a lot of, things not just work related, but also private things. I just felt very comfortable talking to her about different things. So yeah, it just takes time for me to get used to that, and I count myself being really, really lucky because how often can you actually go to work in an office and there's somebody who comes from the same uni or even same class. And my second object I can show you, and that is a hat. Ta-da! This is, please forgive this, I'll just cut it afterwards. But seriously, it will be several years before winter comes again, so I will have a lot of time to deal with those ends. And this is Angel Hat by Kay Jones from the Bakery Bears podcast. And can you actually see the pattern? This is a marled yarn, as in two different color, like the white or cream color and the chocolate brown color, are twisted together and create this like effect. And this is like a marled effect, if you could see. And I don't know when's the best occasion to knit with this type of yarn, like what's the best stitch to show the yarn and also not get the stitch to be concealed by the yarn, if you see what I mean. This is a very busy yarn, I could say, and maybe like a plain stockinette stitch hat or stockinette stitch whatever, maybe. Yeah, So, oh, I can show you the ball band. Like, this is the yarn that I'm using. It's organic 100% super soft merino wool grown by Lammermoor Station for Briar Patch New Zealand Limited. I bought this earlier when Briar Patch was, calling for people to buy their yarn at a 50% discount because they need the cash. They needed the cash, so I bought some of them. And it is definitely buttery. It has been a while since I last knit with something that is so soft and buttery because I've been knitting with more rustic yarn recently. And this pattern, I'm so busy like throwing things and getting things up. Okay, so this is the pattern where, sorry for the really old pattern, but apparently you can wear it not having the brim folded, which I think is the best way for me, because if I fold up the brim, it will be too small. Like this. So I originally wanted to knit this for my dad, but apparently it's too small because my brother actually tried it on yesterday. It was so small for him, and the size of his head and his feet are very similar to that, so it means this will be mine. But it's okay. I don't knit any gauge like swatches for hats because my attitude with hats is like, if it fits me, it's mine. If it fits my dad, it's his. That kind of mentality. I don't, it doesn't matter. I kind of want to try it on to show it, but it's really hot, but I will do it anyway. So, let me see. So I think the normal way, just excuse my head. My head is not designed for, my hair is not designed for hat right now. I don't know if it will ever be. But if I'm like pulling it really low, which I do not like, it's a bit too small. And if it's like a bit taller, it's like normal. And if it's like real tall, I will look like Smurf. And this will look like Peter Griffin's butt chin. Like Peter Griffin from Family Guy. Yeah. It's a little bit too small for me, but I think it will do well with a little bit of blocking, so I'm not really worried. I didn't count my gauge because I didn't knit any swatch, but I think the reason why it's smaller than what I expected it to be is because I'm not really sure about the weight of this ball of yarn, because online on Ravelry and also their website it says it's worsted or Aran, like 10 ply, but on the ball band it say 8 ply DK, and I'm not sure about it because nowhere online says it's a DK, but except on the ball band, so I don't know who to believe in. And it's not like I can do the WPI test, like wraps per inch test, where you wrap the yarn, on like a ruler or whatever and count how many wraps it takes to fill up an inch. The reason why I don't think that test will be accurate is because when you look at this yarn, I'm holding this constant, okay? This is how springy this is how springy it is. It's very elastic. So when you're wrapping it, do you wrap it under this tension or do you wrap it under this like loose tension? I don't know. At least I now know if I'm going to use this yarn on similar pattern or the same pattern for my dad or for my brother, I'll need to cast on more stitches. Or use a slightly bigger needle, I don't know. Probably more stitches. And another work in progress I'm having is a sock that I'm knitting for my boyfriend. This is the second sock, and the first sock was completed, and I showed you this one and talked about it in my last episode. So I'm not really going to talk much about it this episode to save you time, and it's boring to always talk about vanilla socks, I think. So it will probably reappear when I, you know, actually finish this. But, look at that. This is like a mess. Because I was like, when I was knitting the first sock, anyway, I was knitting, this is supposedly a center pull cake of yarn. I don't know what you call it, like center pull ball. And when I was knitting this sock, at some point the yarn just wouldn't come out. It's like get stuck in there, so I need to pull it hard, and then I actually pull the whole bowl of things from the inside, like a mini bowl inside this bowl of yarn. It just feels like the skein of yarn has vomited its organs out. Ew. And that was a lot of work, a lot of untangling, detangling work involved. So my next work in progress is this. Well, I'm not going to show you now because it's in a form that even if I show you, you won't know what it is, and it is a tulip tank. I'm going to put the picture here or there or wherever. It's a free pattern on Ravelry, and I'm really excited about this project because it involves a lot of first time for me. First of all, it's the first time I knit with linen. Second, this is the first time I knit with a language that is not English, and I'm knitting with Italian. And the third thing is this is the first time I actually do short rows, except when I was doing fish lips kiss heel. I never really used like short rows in any other thing, like not in shawls, not in garments, because I didn't really knit enough. And what else? I guess that's it. So the first thing is linen. I'm going to show you the linen I knit with. I'm using my gray linen. It looks so small, and it looks like, I'm not sure if you can see it. They just did, untangle just like that. They don't even have the intention to keep being twisted. This looks so small, and originally it comes in a form like this, but I heard like linen is usually, for a lot of people it's quite hard on your fingers. To soften it up a bit, you can hand wind it twice, and this is what I did, and I wound it into a ball. And the reason why it's not like center pulled ball is because I read online that it's like linen kind of cling together and it gets tangled up very easily. So if you're doing like the center pull ball, it will just get tangled up inside and it will not like be pulled out easily. Like, look at my sock yarn, I just can't deal with it when linen yarn got tangled up because the lack of elasticity just make it so much difficult to solve the problem. So I'm definitely not going to take the risk. And there's nothing bad about a ball that is pulled from the outside other than the fact that it rolled and rolled and rolled. I'm fine with that. I really love this color, by the way, but they only have one skein left. What a pity, because if they have more of this, I'll definitely knit the tank in this color and not this one. And I bought it in a knit yarn store in Hong Kong. I don't know the brand name of this yarn, unfortunately, because I don't even have the ball band, but it's pretty cheap, and I think it's because they actually got this directly from the manufacturer. Not sure when, but probably China. So yeah, this is the first time I knit with linen, and so far the experience has been really, really nice. It's definitely a summer yarn because it feels cool when you're knitting it. It's definitely not like warm. It's a completely different experience. It doesn't hurt my fingers so far, mainly because I was doing things like, winding it up twice. But one problem I have with knitting with linen is that there is lint everywhere. Like, everywhere. I started to knit my Tulip tank yesterday. I'm just going to show you, maybe. I started to knit my Tulip tank yesterday, and then I noticed that there are like dust everywhere, like on the floor, on my bed, everywhere, and I thought, oh, maybe it was dustier yesterday. But apparently when I looked at them closely, they're actually like linen, like fiber, short fiber, grayish blue. So I'm pretty sure they're all from this, like when I'm knitting this. They just shed everywhere. So if you've knit with linen before, can you tell me if that's normal or that this linen yarn that I have is just of a subpar quality? I don't know, it's a little bit irritating to be fair. Yeah, but other than that, I'm liking knitting with linen and I kind of want to think about my next linen project already or buy more linen yarn. Although I can foresee that it will take me really approximately 1,002 years for me to actually finish this tulip tank. And you'll see why later. But because this is the first time I knit with linen, I really go online to look for more information about linen, like on YouTube and on Google. And I found this really informative video done by Christine Kelly. I think the name of that channel is Christine Kelly. And the episode, I think that's a podcast, so I call it an episode. But the video of that podcast, or that the title of that video is called How Linen is Made, and it's a very succinct video with a lot of cute footage. It also talked about the use of linen in ancient Egypt, so it was really interesting. I mean, the information in that video you could definitely find online. There are a lot of readings on it, and you can even find a lot of information on Wikipedia. But I would recommend watching the video because it just summarizes everything, and also there are footage of how linen was made and images. It's just, more fun than reading a Wikipedia article as an introduction. So I'll put the link in the show notes if you're interested, and I definitely recommend that video. I particularly like the part where she talked about the ancient Egypt part, because I always find that period of time in that part of the world magical, like not the Harry Potter type of magical, not the fancier type of magical, but like more mystical and like a dark magic kind of. I don't know, and I like to watch a lot of documentaries about pyramids, and there are like theories about who built the pyramid and like how the pyramid is like a perfect shape and location and orientation that helped it to preserve energy inside, and also helped it for orientation, whatever. What am I saying? I watched a documentary and I'm now pretending to be an expert on pyramid and its theory that it might, the orientation and location of pyramid is actually a form of, like light or a signal for ultra terrestrial beings, whatever. It's fascinating, I must tell you. And I don't think this is being superstitious, but I remember the first time I went to the British Museum, there were a lot of like, I feel like the sun is going down, I need to be faster. I feel like in the, there are a lot of different areas of exhibition, like the Greek, ancient Greek, and then ancient Egyptian period, and then there's like ancient China period. And I remember walking into the ancient Egypt exhibition hall, and I was the only one there, I guess. I remembered, and then I suddenly just felt like the temperature fell in that area. And it's not just about the temperature, it's about how I felt as well. I feel like there is a very, like distant emotion, negative emotion in there. Like, it's not like a very intense fear or whatever, but I could feel like some sort of sadness or fear in there. It's like very low down, a very distant feeling, but at least it's strong enough that I could sense it. Again, I'm not being superstitious because I normally am not very sensitive to those like things that people can't see. But yeah, I just felt very weird that I felt uncomfortable enough that I had to walk faster to leave that area. Like there was like mummies, or not real mummies, but you know, like different exhibitions of, you know, cases, like container of mummies, and then artifacts and different things. And when I talked about it with my boyfriend recently, he was like, he definitely doesn't believe in anything, you know, supernatural, but he was like, even if there is any emotion, it only makes sense that those are negative emotions, because think about the circumstances of, you know, those people who are in the pyramid, like, which is basically a tomb. um, you know, people were slaves or servants being forced to die there, maybe buried alive. You know, there must have been a lot of fear, sadness, and anger, all those things. So yeah, and for that reason, I'm actually quite interested in knowing more about it, and I should definitely read more about that period of time. And it surprises me that linen actually has some connection to that period of time. Like, linen has been used by human for a long time. It keeps people cool, and also it is very durable. And yeah, I mentioned that I knit this with Italian pattern, because if you go to the Ravelry page, you will see that this pattern has an English version, which is the official version, and also an Italian version that is translated by somebody else. Um, I was thinking about picking up Italian language again, because I love the language. It's a beautiful language, and it's not a very difficult language. So kind of want to pick it up again. And I thought, you know, when you want to learn a language, first thing is you need to like the language. You must be interested in that language. And second of all, it's easier if you start with car. Yeah, it's easier if you start with an area that you're genuinely interested in, and I feel like I'm really interested in knitting, so knitting with the Italian pattern is probably a good starting point. So yeah, and I find it very, very, again, fascinating, because I understand that different language have different terms for example, knit and purl. Say for example, in Chinese, knit and purl is like high stitch and low stitch. I don't know which is which, but it's like a high stitch and a low stitch. And in Italian, instead of having knit and purl, they say, like, if knit is like doing it on the right side, no, on the straight side or direct side, and then purl is doing it in the reverse side, which is actually very descriptive. So what I learned, what I feel about knitting with Italian, I'm feeling safe knitting an Italian project. I mean, I feel safe about knitting an Italian pattern, using Italian pattern, because there is an English version that I can always cross check if I don't understand anything. And sometimes when, you know, I'm lazy and I'm reading from the English pattern and I see something that I don't really understand, or I'm not sure because there's some ambiguity there, I can refer back to the Italian pattern, which is usually more descriptive. So I like the experience so far. And the third thing I said I'm doing it for the first time is definitely short row. So this is the project, and it doesn't look really good. It doesn't look like anything right now, but these, you can see these are like thicker, like larger than this sections, because I'm actually not working on this section right now. I'm just working here, short rows, 100 stitches approximately to start with, and it's increasing and increasing. And the pattern suggested using wrap and turn short row, but because it's a very visible short row, I went online to look for method to substitute it with German short row, and also how to do German short row. I will put the links that I relied on in the show notes, and if you're interested in, you know, like short row substitution and also German short rows, you can go to my show notes, and I hope you find them useful, because I did find them very useful. So about the pattern, You know, if you go to the project page of those people who have knit this Tulip tank by Pearl Soho, a lot of people say it's a very tedious knit. Like, they like the construction, it looks very beautiful, but it's tedious, and I'm totally feeling it now because I cast on approximately 300 plus stitches, and then you need to do short rows, and I'm knitting it flat, so I need to do a lot of purls. I don't hate purling, but purling for at least 100 stitches every time is a totally different story. It's just, it will take forever for me. I mean, like, think about it. I spent a lot of time yesterday doing this, and it's still like really small, and I just can't even imagine, because, and I don't want to imagine because it will make me feel very disheartened, how long it will take for me to actually knit a complete tank from this. But anyway, I shall persist. Oh, actually, there's another like first time for me as well, and that is, this is the first time I knit not only one swatch but 2 swatches. The pattern suggested using 3.25 for the swatch to get the gauge, and this is like 3.25, and my gauge is like 26 per inch, 26 stitches per inch, and the gauge recommended is 24. I mean, not recommended, the gauge for the pattern is 24 stitches. And then I changed into 3.5 millimeter needle, and this is 24 stitches per 4 inches. Did I say 26 stitches per inch? Because that was not correct. I meant to say 26 stitches for 4 inches. So this is the gauge for that matches the pattern, but I don't like the fabric because it's too holey, and I'm not very comfortable about wearing something that is so holey. Like, people could definitely see through everything. So I decided to stick with this and use 3.25, but I tweaked a little bit with the cast on stitches for the pattern to accommodate my smaller gauge. And I actually struggled for a long time which fabric I should use, because apparently I like this better, but I really struggled. I mean, I really didn't want to use the 3.25 needle, not because it was small, because I'm fine with knitting socks with 2.5 millimeter. It's just that I was knitting, the only 3.25 needles I have is the High Sharp, and it was too sharp for me. Like, I know a lot of people like High Sharp because it's sharp. For me, it's just too sharp. I have 2.5 millimeter from High Sharp as well. I've lent it to my friend, and I'm not missing the needles. I like their needles, like in, you know, like 4 millimeter High Sharp. It's perfect. 4.5, perfect. But, you know, like 3.25, it's still too pointy for me. And I don't have any other 3.25. But at the end, I decided to bite the bullet and knit with 3.25, and it was actually okay because it's a really simple stitches. It's just knit and purl so far, so I don't need to do a lot of things with it. But yeah, it hurts. It's really too sharp for me, too pointy for me. I'm recently really thinking about buying myself a set of interchangeable circular needles, and I'm thinking about High Sharp because overall it seems to have the best overall performance, but I'm a little bit worried about having to knit with such pointy needles for small needles again. I'll think about it later. Oh, and I forgot to talk about how I tweaked the pattern. Not exactly how, but what I did for the modification. So I wrote everything down on an envelope because that's how I roll. Like, I just grab whatever is around me. And can you see this picture? This is me trying to visualize how short rows actually work. Because when I read the pattern, one thing about the pattern is it didn't explain or describe the construction of the tank. It didn't say like whether it's a top down or bottom up, so I had to figure it out myself by reading the pattern and, you know, visualizing it. So anyway, I try to knit a size, I think the smallest size of this pattern is 31 inches, like here, or 32. and then the second smallest size is 35, so there are like quite a bit of difference between them. So I decided to knit something that is slightly bigger than the smallest size because I like to have more positive ease. So I cast on 106 stitches, and then place marker, and then 100 stitches, place marker, and 106 instead of the 98, 83, 98 combination. First of all, I converted the number of cast on stitches to fit my gauge, and then I increased a little bit like stitches in the middle part just to give myself a little bit more ease. And also another thing I noticed when I knit the swatch is it's very, very biased. I guess it's because when you look at this yarn here, the twist actually gets untwisted very easily, but when they are twisted, they are just twisted in the same direction, right? So in a sense, it just acts like a single plied yarn. And one of the characteristics of single plied yarn is, when you knit them, usually you form like a V shape of stitch, right? Like this, right? But if you're knitting with single plied yarn, you'll notice that sometimes one of the leg actually look more slanted and one of the leg looks straight. And think about a lot of these stitches like stacked together, it will create a fabric that is slanted to one side. And when I knit this one, like the swatch, I've never seen a fabric that is more slanted than this. But luckily, after washing and blocking, it just becomes like drapey, and it's not slanted anymore. I'm just slightly worried that there is like some memory in the fabric itself that in time it will sway back to the slanted position, but you can always wash it and block it again. And I think that's the reason why people say when you're knitting with like a single plied yarn, not only with linen, you usually want to knit flat instead of knitting it in a round, because when you're knitting it around, it will just twist in one direction slowly and make the garment look not very smart. But when you're knitting flats in several pieces and having to stitch them together at the end, the seam supposedly will give a bit of structure to the garment. And luckily and also unluckily, this tulip tank I'm knitting is actually knit flat. A lot of knitting and a lot of purling as well, so I hope that it will not be biased so crazily. So far that is all I have to say about my knitting progress. So recently this podcast have been receiving some love from other people, and the first one that I knew about was from Eva from the Charm of It. If you have not watched her podcast before, you should definitely do, because it's a really good podcast with Eva, the host, talking a lot of details about her knitting objects, and also she is a very clever, like smart, intelligent person, and not just being intelligent, she also has all the right values and she reads a lot. I just feel like she's a very cool person to hang out with. But I actually think a lot of you are here because of her, because after her shout out from her podcast, I could see there is like a very quick increase of subscribers for this podcast and also more followers on Instagram. So thank you very much to Eva, and also thank you for you guys who decided to give this podcast a chance. And then another shout out this podcast received is from Irina, and I think it's Irina, not Irina, because Irina, right? So it is a shout out from Instagram story. Irina posted on her Instagram story and tagged me so that I know that she was talking about my podcast, and I'm really happy. And Irina is Irina Pearl 2 together on Instagram, and I'll put it in the show notes because her Instagram is like a public Instagram, and I like to mention the Instagram not just because she gave me a shout out, but because I really, really enjoy her feed. She has a very, very beautiful Instagram feed with a lot of beautiful pictures, and not only that, but with very, I just enjoy reading the captions with a lot of stories and information about the knitting object, like a lot of sharing of what she's feeling about the project. I just feel like it's a mini blog, a very, very digestible blog with beautiful pictures and also beautiful words. I definitely recommend going to check out her feed. And Irina actually commented below one of my videos, and she asked whether I have Googled askew before. So askew, ASKEW, I talked about this before in one of my episodes because it was the shawl or cowl by Stephen West. And I didn't know the meaning of askew before, and I didn't even know how to pronounce it. I think I said askew instead of askew. So I was like, no, I didn't. So I went on to Google askew, and I was Skyping with my boyfriend while doing it, so I wasn't really paying attention to what I was doing. I was doing it like absent-mindedly, so I was reading the definition. Oh, so askew means something that's not straight. And then I was like, wait. Is it me or is it the computer? Or, there's something weird, and I'm not going to spoil it. If you have not Google askew before, do it. Like, when I noticed it, I was like, Google, you're so naughty. And then under askew, there's some suggested word like synonyms of the word askew with blue font underlined, like slanted or whatever. If you click into those words, usually it has the same effect. Just do it. It's fun. So yeah, I just feel like every time if people mention my podcast, there will be a surge, a big one or a smaller one in the number of subscribers and also followers over Instagram. And that makes me very happy because it's not just about, the number, but also it shows that there are people who actually like this podcast enough to feel that this is one of the podcasts that they are willing to spread words about and, sharing, not just liking the video, not just commenting, not just subscribing, but also take one step further to share about this podcast. That meant so much to me. Again, not because of a number, but because what it says behind that act. So if you're considering giving this podcast a shout out, please do tag me because I really want to know who you are, and I don't know, maybe we can be friends. I mean, that sounds so weird. That sounds like, oh, follow me and I'll follow you back and we can be friends. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, because if you don't tag me, I don't know who you are. And if I don't know who you are, it's like an opportunity of me and you being able to connect. It's not there. See what I mean? I hope you do. So yeah, tag me when you're giving me a shout out. And by shout out, I normally don't really understand what shout out mean because I'm too old fashioned. But I guess shout out is just, like a mentioning, like tagging me on Instagram post or stories or in your podcast or whatever. I think whenever this podcast is mentioned and it's not dissing or, hating, that's a shout out. Is that correct? I hope it is. So I guess that's it for today. There's something else I like to talk about, like the knitting culture in Hong Kong, because last episode, I think it's last episode or one of the episodes, but that's a really recent comment. Someone was asking, about the knitting culture in Hong Kong, and I actually gave it a hard thought, and I kind of think I have something else to say about the knitting culture in Hong Kong other than, there's none. But there's some, but it's not very local, and I kind of like generate a theory about it because I like to theorize everything. But then my camera is dying, the battery is dying, everything's dying. So maybe I will just leave it for next episode. And if you're interested, stay tuned. And thank you for watching. And I hope to see you guys again soon. Happy knitting. Bye bye. Bye bye.